Hello and welcome to everybody here today and everybody watching the recording to this Work That Reconnects Network webinar. We are so excited to have you join us for this webinar and conversation cafe event. In this program, we highlight a wide range of Work That Reconnects facilitators and members of the Work That Reconnects Network community, as well as bringing in others from other organizations and other walks of life who are contributing to the great turning in diverse and complementary ways. And today we are so excited to welcome Margot Vengretta, Tom Deacon, and Kirsty Heron. They're going to be speaking to us today about climate activism and the great turning in this event, Love, Rage, Rebel. And we are so excited to welcome you here and to have you guide us through this journey today. So welcome, and I will pass it right over to you.
Hey, thank you, Joe, and thank you everyone for joining. A warm welcome to all of you, and welcome to this theme, Love, Rage, Rebel. This is an opportunity to connect with, to bridge the work that reconnects with climate activism. There was a request from the Work That Reconnects, like, who is willing to do a webinar on on their relationship with, for example, Extinction Rebellion. And since we have an active group here in the UK where we offer sessions, we jumped on the occasion. So a brief overview over what you might expect this evening, our plans. We'll see what happens, but the plan is to do a short introduction to the three dimensions of the Great Turning, and do that through a personal story, personal examples, and then also followed in your own examples in breakout rooms. So you have an opportunity to check in with somebody else and share your own examples. We're sharing some stories about our experiences of the work that reconnects and climate activists, and how that relates to the Great Turning. So this will be again followed by reflections in small groups, again, where you meet in, I think, in groups of 3 to meet with some people and share your own relationship to these topics. In the middle, there will be a short break, bio break, just a couple of minutes. And after that, there will be some time for questions or sharing your stories in the larger group. And we also hope to have some time to actually do a little bit of inner work, to a bit of inner reflection, part of the work that reconnects. And we'll close. So my name is Margot Vengretta. I'm originally from the Netherlands. I live in the Vindhorn Eco Village in Scotland, where I'm very much involved with inner work for outer action, and do that in online courses and on site. That's enough. Over to Kirsty, I believe.
Hello, everybody. Kirsty Heron here. Currently based on the west coast of Scotland. It's a wet and rainy night, another one here. I'm celebrating 10 years facilitating this work, and it's in the last 3 years, I've been most of it has been dedicated to bringing it to climate activist groups. I'm really looking forward to sharing with you some of our experience of working with Just Stop Oil and Insulate Britain and Extinction Rebellion, among others. And I'm feeling really grateful to be part of this global network. I'm also involved with this UK, England, Wales, Ireland, Scotland, very sort of loose network. And I'm also working in sort of small collectives of people offering this work. So I'm here with some of my own stories and the wider stories from these collectives of people offering work that reconnects in service of activism. I'd also like to name that this webinar is taking place at the same time as the COP27 climate talks in Egypt, where most protest has been suppressed. And yeah, sort of acknowledging that this is a global webinar, so there'll be people here from many different countries, and possibly in some countries there might be even more police and corporate and state oppression than there is in the UK. and so protest might look very different where you are, and possibly some of you are in countries where the civil rights is strongly protected, and if so, then I celebrate that and encourage more people out on the streets. Passing over to Tom.
Hi everyone, so wonderful to be here with such a global collective this evening, and also really excited to have this opportunity to connect together around climate activism and the Great Turning and this beautiful body of work that is the Work That Reconnects. And just wanted to acknowledge that this webinar sits within a much wider context, both in what Kirsty has named and happening in this time and many other things, and also in the calendar of what is being offered through the Work That Reconnects Network. And just wanted to acknowledge that we're following on from some really powerful webinars that have brought forward some big thinking that relate to activism, and just wanted to name that maybe some of you attended or have watched back the conversation between Bayo Komolafe and Joe that happened in September. And some of the thinking that Bayo brought through there around post-activism particularly, and just acknowledging that maybe that's still filtering through for some of us, and that what we're going to offer, sits and resonates within that. And also recognising that Nikki Kashtan is going to be offering the next webinar and bringing conversations around power and privilege. And so also really welcoming that we get to sit here between these powerful conversations, and that they move through and resonate with and question maybe as well some of what we're going to offer this evening. So really inviting a spirit of sort of curiosity, inquiry and learning together in these times. So thank you so much for being here. So I'm a Work That Reconnects facilitator, came across this work just over 10 years ago. And through my education background, started to weave it into the work that I was doing around environmental education. But like Kirsty, and we'll share a bit more of this story later, I've really been dedicating my energy in service of activism through the Work That Reconnects. And in my other work, I'm also a climate science trainer. I do community tree planting, and I also take people on wilderness experiences, so weaving the Work That Reconnects to all of these things. So really celebrating this community coming together from around the world, welcoming in the diversity of experience and identity that we saw through some of the things you shared in signing up. Some of you really familiar with the Work That Reconnects, others this may be new. Some of you identify as activists, others not. So many movements represented, and people from over 20 countries signed up for this webinar, so really welcoming all of that, and felt like it would be really lovely to just greet each other, because we're pinned here. And something that Bayo talked about when he was speaking was to just name this power dynamic on Zoom, that we're pinned and we're not sat in a circle together, and would really just welcome everyone to unmute and say hello to each other in whatever language you wish, and just hear each other before we carry on.
Hello, hello.
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 Oh, again, to everyone. So grateful to be here with all of you.
To be with you all.
Thank you for your countries.
It's a circle.
Hola, hola.
Awesome.
And namaste.
Wonderful. So I already feel like I'm beginning to arrive just from hearing your voices. It really helps me to settle in, and I like to just do a short grounding to enable us all to be present here as much as we can do. So everybody's traveled to get here, whether your journey has been a physical one and you've just got home from work, or you've just come in from seeing a friend, or perhaps your journey's been more mental. Maybe you've been sat at your desk, and 1 minute before this webinar began, you ended another meeting and you've just joined this one. But that's a journey in a way. So I'd like to just imagine for a moment that you're just brushing off the dust from your journey. So using your hands, just short, brief patting of your arms down to your hands, brushing off the dust. What do you need to brush off to be here? That's it. Thoughts about that meeting you've just had. That's it. Think, yeah, you might want to brush your face down. Just what do you need to just brush away, but momentarily, just to be able to be present here? Is it brushing off tiredness or the to-do list? Just brushing it down. You can pick it back up later, but just brushing it away. And then what can help us? What might we like to brush in? So slower movements up your arm towards your heart. What are you brushing in? What helps us to be here? Gratitude for ourselves, gifting ourselves this time to be here. Perhaps others have made it easier for you to be here. Is somebody cooking you a meal? Is somebody looking after the kids or the dog? Also brushing in, just slowly and tenderly, an awareness of this moment in time where disconnection, seemingly in so many parts of our lives, is creating disruption to both human life and more than human life. Just brushing that in tenderly. And also brushing in an awareness of everybody here on this webinar, this global community of people who are keen to engage in this topic, keen to connect with each other. Here we all are. Thank you. Over to Margot.
Just going to jump in before Margot and share one brief thing. And I guess just to name that while this isn't a Work That Reconnects workshop, we are going to invite some sharing, both in breakouts and in the whole group, as Joe mentioned earlier. And so just going to share into the chat something that we use a lot in the sessions that we're going to talk about, that we use to resource activism. And this is just a really simple set of group agreements, really thinking about what makes this a brave or safe enough space for us to feel able to share into. So I can't see my chat, but perhaps popping up in your chat, just a few things, and really just to put them there to hold lightly and to say this is something to help hold us in this time together. And really, when it comes to the personal sharing in breakouts, just inviting this sense of confidentiality so that we can really share openly and connect with others around the world, and maybe speak about our activism or our feelings around it. And also that there's an element of transparency. As Joe named, this is being recorded, and so anything said in the main space will be available on the internet. So just so that we're clear. And really that our feelings are welcome here. We're really inviting some self-awareness around giving each other time to be heard when we're in breakouts, and that we can do that through really actively listening, being open to difference, being curious about what's being said. And what we name when we're working in movements for climate justice is really also, some of you may be working in action spaces, and knowing that we can look after each other by not mentioning names and places and dates and names if stuff does come up around the activism you're involved in. Okay.
Great, thank you. So we had the idea to bring in the 3 dimensions of the great turning, and rather than talk about it, to actually share some examples of my own life, how the great turning actually expressed itself in my personal life. So just as an example, so I'm going to share the screen. So, okay, I imagine you can see this. So here is a short summary of the 3 dimensions of the great turning. The great turning is this time of huge change that we're in. So one aspect of the great turning is called holding actions. And other here is called Gaian structures. And a third one is a shift in consciousness. And reflecting on it, I actually noticed in my own life, there have been like distinct times when actually I spent a lot of time on the first one. So I'll stop the sharing. I was a teenager, I was 18, I wanted to go to Amsterdam to study medicine, and there were no places to live. I couldn't find a house, there was nothing affordable. So in the end, I ended up squatting a house. I was pointed in that direction. So a few people helped me squatting a house where I lived happily for 9 years. It was brilliant. And out of huge gratitude, because I had been struggling up till then, I said, well, maybe I can help you, can help other people in return. So famous last words. It ended up actually me giving up my study of medicine. I thought it was much healthier to be a social activist, and I became gradually full-time involved in that squatters movement in Amsterdam it was the late 70s, early 80s, which was quite lively and energetic, a bit like the energy of Extinction rebellion at the moment, I find. So that was a very intense time where I was out on the streets, on the barricades, it was very lively and intense. So I see that as one part of the great turning of like social activism. And that is like holding actions to slow down the destruction. So a second part is Gaian structures. When I look at my life now, I live here in Eco-Village Vindhorn. I live here in an eco-house since a year. I go to the shop, buy organic food. I'm part of a carpool. We share, I don't know, about 20 cars with 200, 300 people. The energy here comes from the windmills. The food here that I buy a lot of it is grown by my friends, local, organic, seasonal. A little bit of savings I put in an ethical bank. So a lot of my life at the moment, and supported by this eco-village, I can actually be part of supportive structures. It's not all of it, but a lot of it is. So I see that as Gaian structures. And as Joanna Macy would say, but that alone is not enough. So a third aspect of the great turning is the transformation of consciousness, is to change our mind. So I've been involved with the Work That Reconnects and Active Hope for about 20 years, since Joanna Macy came here in the community several times. So that has been a huge source of inspiration where I actually get nourished and inspired. I also have other tools that help me. I'm a Buddhist practitioner, so those are things that help me to actually stay sane in my life. Here in the community, we are very lucky. We have, for example, a few years ago, we had a conference on climate change and consciousness. So we had more than 300 people here coming together, talking about, all the positive things that they are doing in relation to the whole climate challenge. And thinking a week ago, I stood in the queue in our shop and I had a chat with someone who is providing reed beds and living machines in India. So that was a little 3-minute story in the queue. So I find it very helpful to be surrounded and linked with other positive people who are taking positive action. So that's how it ended up in my life. And this is not the only truth. So I'm actually really curious to hear, how is that for you? How are you part of the great turning? And how is the great turning moving through you? So this is an opportunity to move into breakout rooms, and you'll be moving into pairs. You'll have, let's say you have 3 minutes each to share about the following sentence. In these times of escalating climate crisis, the great turning is happening through me in the form of, and Joe is hopefully so kind, yes, there it is, to put it in the chat. In these times of escalating climate crisis, the great turning is happening through me in the form of. So take 3 minutes to share, to take turns. So one person starts. I suggest the person with the shortest hair starts, just to make it easy. Complete this sentence. So you have 3 minutes to complete this sentence. When you get stuck or you don't know what to say, just start that sentence again. The other person is invited to, for 3 minutes, just listen. So it's not a dialogue or a conversation, but simply listen. Give your partner the gift of your full attention. Listen with your ears, your eyes, and your heart. And in 3 minutes, there is we swap, and the other person will speak, and the other person will listen. So, and then we'll have a moment to share in the large group. Is that okay? Any questions? You can still see the chat, the sentence that is in the chat when you go into the breakout rooms. Okay, Joe, over to you. How are you doing?
Just 1 second, I have a last minute change I need to make.
Okay, sure.
And okay, here we go. Okay, I think the room should be all set. So like Margot said, you can reopen the chat once you get into your breakout room so that you can see that sentence again. And I'll send you a prompt when it's time to switch partners.
Right.
Great, here we go.
Thank you. Okay, so welcome back. I would love to hear a little bit what you've been talking about. I'm really curious. So one way to do that, to get a lot of information, is if you go to the chat and write down, is there a highlight, a keyword, something that stood out for you in your conversation from your own experience that you'd like to share? Then now please write it down in the chat and make sure you send it to everyone. So just a keyword or a short sentence. Right. So I'll see a few. Authentic communication, small steps, hugely inspirational. Wonderful and enriching, feeling connected, bereavement, slowing down, walking barefoot and listening, singing, stop the money pipeline, faith communities, deep time consciousness, permaculture studying, challenges and stepping up, normalizing grief, becoming a good ancestor, Wow, lots to learn. Gift economy, beautiful. Optimism about transformation, difficult but countered by determination to keep trying. Beautiful. Wow, thank you. It's beautiful. I find it very uplifting and inspiring to hear that, because then we can also learn from each other's experiences. So thank you for sharing this. And now I would like to hand over the space to Kirsty and Tom. Over to you. The next part.
Thanks, Margot. I'm going to move into an exploration of these 3 dimensions through telling 3 different stories of activism, or possibly more, but based around 3 different stories of activism. We're going to look at holding actions, and where we've used the work that reconnects in action spaces, very dynamic places with a kind of different challenge to doing it in a different kind of calmer or organized way. And that was during COP26 a year ago, and during Extinction rebellions, usually in London. We're going to be looking at building the new, the work that reconnects as part of a different way of organizing, a different way to have a sense of our community, whilst we are an activist community. But what does that look like? What unites us? What brings us together beyond, or as well as, our desire for justice? You know, what underpins us as a community? And that's something that we've been looking at with Just Stop Oil, which is started in the UK and has now got lots of sister campaign groups around the world. And we will also be looking at the sort of shift in consciousness that accompanies this, the work that reconnects as part of a regenerative culture. How a different understanding, how shifting our consciousness, how might we organize differently? How might we organize our actions differently, our meetings? What else do we need to look at just beyond our demands for to stop oil and gas? What other elements of perhaps climate justice do we need to look at? Justice that comes to other humans and the more than human life that we share this planet with. Are you ready to share some screen?
Yeah, so when we had this invitation come through from the network to offer something, it felt really exciting to be able to bring some stories from our lived experience of being Work That Reconnects facilitators in service of climate activism and other forms of activism as well. And so delighted to have this richness of community here this evening that will, I'm sure, also have many, many stories, and there will be space for that. And just for now, Kirsty and I are going to have a little conversation about some of these aspects of the work that we're doing. So I'm just going to share my screen for a moment to just set the scene. So we're going to start with Extinction Rebellion. And for many of you, this may be very familiar. Some of you may have taken action as part of Extinction Rebellion movements around the world. And for some of you, this may be less familiar. And so I just wanted to paint the picture for a moment. And these are some images from Extinction Rebellion protests that have taken place in the UK, mostly in London in these images, but all around the UK, and have also been taking place around the world. And this is a movement that is based in mass civil disobedience. So this is large numbers of people coming out and causing some form of disruption or having provocative actions that also are breaking the law at some level, and usually at quite a low level, often blocking roads. And really this movement sort of blossomed in 2018 into 2019 in the UK and spread very quickly around the world, demanding that governments really do tell the truth about the urgency of the climate emergency, that they take action now on what science is telling us, and that in developed countries they take that quicker to take justice into account, and that they do that through citizens' assemblies that are legally binding decision-making bodies of citizens that are randomly selected to be representative of the population. So we're going to share a few stories of the work that we've been offering or have been part of that speak to these dimensions of the Great Turning. And Kirsty, I wondered if you wanted to start our conversation around this by sharing a little story.
Yeah, Tom, it was 3 years ago, October 2019, I first got involved with Extinction Rebellion with sharing the Work That Reconnects. I answered a call out for Work That Reconnects facilitators to offer Work That Reconnects during a 2-week rebellion in London. With several other facilitators, we were coordinating via a messaging app on our phones, and we had like a schedule of planned dates, locations, times, who we would be co-facilitating with. It seemed very organized. So I turned up. I didn't really know anybody. I'd hardly met any of these people before. I'd been living out of the country for a few years, so I was keen to meet up with other people. None of our schedule went to plan. It was a very, very chaotic time. The police were putting a lot of pressure on all the occupied spaces. So places where we had marked an X, we're going to be doing our workshop here at that time. It just didn't happen. What did happen was, amazingly, we managed to buddy up occasionally. And in the middle of the street, here we are, we don't know each other, but let's plan a workshop. Okay, I'll do this, you do this. Where are we going to do it? How about that gazebo over there? Let's ask if we can use it. How are we going to tell people that it's happening? Well, we'll grab a mic and we'll tell people, we'll invite people, or we'll write the name of our workshop on a bit of cardboard and we'll walk around and invite people. That tent over there, 10 minutes, come on over. And people came, and I think 2 out of the 3 workshops that I ran, the police presence became such that the tent needed to come down. And so part of the way through the workshop, several people would start taking the tent down. We helped move the cushions, and some people wanted to carry on the workshop. So we went outside, stood next to a tree, or stood in a small circle and continued the spiral of the Work That Reconnects to its completion. It was just holding very loosely, holding tightly but loosely, this form of the spiral of the Work That Reconnects within a very dynamic, chaotic flow of thousands of people. I up to then I'd been used to running my workshops with clear boundaries, and the boundaries were fluid and changing here. And I met some incredible people. One of them is nearly Tom. Didn't quite beat you there, Tom, because I was messaging Tom on this messaging app. Hey, Tom, do you want to buddy up? We can offer some. I don't know you, but you're on my list of people who facilitate this work. Tom messaged back, can't do it now. I'm purely in dimension 1, holding action on this street, occupying a street. At the moment, shifting consciousness is happening in me, but right now I'm mostly in holding actions. So that was my first introduction to bringing the Work That Reconnects into this very live, dynamic kind of environment.
Yeah, and I'm being reminded, Kirsty, as you share this, how these initial big actions that came about as Extinction Rebellion really took off in the UK enabled a lot of Work That Reconnects facilitators to connect. And I guess we're sharing these stories for interest, and also aware that there are many facilitators here, and you might have had similar experiences, or it might feel useful to hear how some things have come about through our experience. So actually from that initial rebellion, we did bring together a network of over 60 facilitators in the UK that were wanting to be in service of Extinction Rebellion activists, to support them in nourishing this movement through offering spaces for people to really ground in their gratitude, to honour the pain that have brought so many people into these actions, the grief, the recognition of the urgency of the climate crisis, and to bring about these other perspectives that we can bring through the work that reconnects to support the activism. And so from there, this network has gone on to run workshops around the UK, supporting local groups, helping them build, helping them grow, bringing together trust within those groups. It's also gone on to hold other workshops in other forms as we've moved through, and I'm seeing some faces in this webinar that I've met in various places in London to facilitate workshops in church spaces, on beaches, on low tide, on the River Thames, to hold spaces in the middle of what can be quite stressful, quite heightened, quite emotional actions, for people to land, to connect, to ground, and to nourish their flame for activism, to mitigate for burning out in these very intense situations. So really welcoming in these different elements of the Great Turning in support of the holding actions, and offering some of that inner space and different ways of connecting these sort of guiding structures as well. Yeah, and maybe just to share one example that came forward in a rebellion that happened just last month in London. There was a big march planned by the youth within Extinction Rebellion, and it was really beautifully planned. And at the beginning, a full spiral was held with over 1,000 people stood in a park space, just using simple sentence starters, as we did earlier, to move through our gratitude, to honour our pain, and then to start to vision the world that we wish to bring into being, and to step towards that, and immediately then go on a huge march through central London, giving out acorns along the way to symbolise these seeds of the vision that we wanted to bring. So this for me was a really beautiful example of bringing this work right into action spaces to set the tone for a demonstration. Yeah.
I know that sounded so beautiful, and that possibility to connect with other people on that level, even with, like, as you say, with 1,000 people, to be able to connect on that level to what your deepest motivations are for being there, to be able to say, yes, I love being alive, yes, I love life, and to connect to that with, like, where you're going, what are we looking for, what's our hope for here.
So, and we're going to share some resources at the end, and there's a couple of things in there that we've also offered out in Rebellions to just help people have different sorts of conversations, to move through a spiral of the work that reconnects in a conversational form. Kirsty and I have also been part of developing some walks that reconnect, which is a little bit like an app. You can do it on your phone, and we've offered that in Rebellions as well. So we'll share those. But I think I'm going to move on and share about a couple of other movements. So this was about mass civil disobedience. We're going to move into some movements that identify as being about civil resistance. And these have come about with a lot of people that have been part of Extinction Rebellion and are wanting to really push the edges, to push the dilemma for governments to really step up on their promises. So I'm just going to share my screen once again, just to set the scene a little bit with a couple of images. So we're going to talk about two campaigns, two really brave, courageous movements that have been taking action persistently over the last year and a bit. One of them is Insulate Britain, and this time last year, and a little bit earlier than this time last year, you may have seen, depending on where you are in the world and what your news feeds are like, you may have seen images like this. Small groups of people, and you may notice in this picture there's quite a few vicars and priests in amongst them, blocking the largest motorway in the UK, the M25 around London. This movement, along with, and I'm going to share some more images, Just Stop Oil, which is a movement that is right in an intense action phase right now. And again, this may have come through your news feeds that today there are 18 people from this campaign in prison. Some of them plucked off their doorsteps today. Again, to do with individuals this time climbing gantries across the M25, blocking this motorway to bring the scale of this emergency to the attention of the public and to put pressure on government right in the middle of COP27, when there are many grand words but very little action behind it. And these two movements have had very simple demands. Insulate Britain says it in the name. It's demanding that the UK government immediately promises to fully fund and take responsibility for insulation of all social housing in Britain by 2025. And for Just Stop Oil, that the UK government makes a statement that it will immediately halt all further licensing and consent for exploration, development and production of fossil fuels in the UK. So some very clear demands, some very clear actions, and some very headline grabbing actions again that you may have seen, with young people zip locking themselves to goalposts in high-level football games, throwing soup over famous paintings, blocking oil terminals, and many other actions. So again, just setting the scene and really wanting to celebrate the part of the work that reconnects in these movements, and acknowledging you may have different feelings about the tactics and the implications, but today we're just going to focus on the role of this work in holding space for these activists. And again, Kirsty, Margot and I are part of an amazing team of people we call ourselves the Resilience to Resist team. That really brings forward spaces for activists to build trust and courage together, and to build resilience, to be persistently taking these high stakes actions. Many of these actions face the potential of prison time and other huge sacrifices for these people. And the work that reconnects right at the beginning of Insulate Britain was recognised by two people that had attended an Active Hope book group and had gone to a Work That Reconnects workshop, and knew that this was the body of work that would support these campaigns, to support people stepping towards some incredibly high stakes actions. And Kirsty, I wondered if you would share a little bit about the form that takes. What's happening right now with that?
Well, right now, and for the last year and a half, on a weekly basis, this team of people has been offering sessions based on the work that reconnects, that we call Building Trust and Courage, sometimes once a week. At the moment, it's twice a week. And at certain times, when there's been a lot of action planned, these sessions have happened 3 times a week to meet the differing time needs of the campaign members. And yeah, these Building Trust and Courage sessions, they're about an hour and a half long, or they are an hour and a half long. And we springboard from the work that reconnects, we draw on it deeply. We introduce practices from the work that reconnects through in these sessions, and they are so valued. They're valued as a way of connecting with each other, with a community of people that is across the whole country between actions, and also as a sort of build up, as a lead up, as to build trust and courage before taking actions. So as Tom said, so many of these actions are high stakes actions. They can lead to arrest and imprisonment. And so certain times, some of these sessions have been specifically for groups of people who have been knowing that they are likely to go to prison. So perhaps we'll select practices and exercises that not only build that trust and courage, but that sort of resilience to resilience once they might be in prison. So practices particularly around gratitude for nature and connection with community, those kind of things that can support somebody whilst they are actually spending time on their own in a confined space.
So again, for those of you interested in the shape of those sessions, we'll share some resources later to give you some outline plans just to draw inspiration from that perhaps you may wish to use in other movements that you're supporting. And also really to celebrate that this work within these movements has also enabled a lot of other facilitators to come into contact with the Work That Reconnects and to develop their skills within it. And again, there are some people on this call that I'm so delighted that are able to be here and really celebrating all of this work that is going on, not just in these Building Trust and Courage sessions, but also that because it's moving through so many facilitators now within these movements, it also comes into meetings where some people are using this body of work to support the shape of what otherwise can be quite stressful, confrontational, high energy meetings, to start with gratitude and to connect with our purpose and perhaps the pain that we're honouring for the world in stepping into these actions. And so to really bring the essence of this work, not just into workshop spaces, but also into other parts of the functioning of these campaigns. So these people that maybe you're seeing on the news, maybe it's coming through news feeds in other parts of the world, just to know that many of these people have been resourced by the Work That Reconnects to support them in doing what they're doing, and taking some of these practices even with them into police cells, into prison cells, to help them stay connected with their intentions to take action in these times. So again, just a little snippet, a little essence, and we'll share some more resources, but we wanted to move into one last little bit of sharing just to really acknowledge that right now we are in the middle of COP27, almost in the middle of COP27. And that this time last year, there was quite a team of people actually on the streets in Glasgow during COP26. And again, I'll just share some images to bring this forward. Drawing on this work to support activists from around the world that were coming to Glasgow for these critical talks, and to bring the Work That Reconnects into these spaces. And Kirsty, I wonder, just while I've got these images up, maybe you could share a little bit about how this began in the big, beautiful space on the left, and maybe share a story about that.
Yeah, that was the opening night of the COP26. And when I say the opening night, that was the opening night for the people who'd gone there to truly connect. And because there was, for me, there was two COPs 26 happening. There was the one that was happening with the politicians and the corporations, and there was also this festival of climate consciousness that erupted and flourished with so much creativity around the city. It was a joy to be there, and if you weren't there, that might not have come across on the news, but this opening ceremony, we were invited, several of us as facilitators were invited to run a council of all beings, or to hold space for a council of all beings. There was maybe 80 to 100 people there, with a central group, participatory group of 20 to take part in this ceremony, which is one of the Work That Reconnects practices that is really close to my heart, and particularly because it brings in the voices of the more than human beings we share the planet with. It gives voice to what would they say at COP26? What would that forest say? What would that glacier say? And in this ceremony, we created space for these other beings' voices to be heard. And it was the first of 3 Council of All Beings that happened over the 2 weeks of COP26. This was the first, and we had a whole program of different Work That Reconnects workshops held in a sanctuary space. I think you can see the picture on the right, the green space. That was a sanctuary space where our schedule did go to plan. We're a team of 7 people offering the work that reconnects in this sanctuary space on a daily basis, at the same slot every day. Workshops are an hour and a half to 2 hours to 2.5 hours for the Council of All Beings. Yeah.
And I guess there's been some lovely feedback from these sessions as well. And in the Council of All Beings that Kirsty was describing, this was also a space that was inviting the Indigenous peoples that were representing, I think, was it South America, Kirsty, or was it wider than South America? There was a lot of Indigenous peoples that had traveled to Glasgow to try and have their voices heard, and that they were welcomed into this particular ceremonial space to begin that journey. And also that at the end of this, a lady from South America came and shared how touching it had been, and just weeks later, we saw in the news that she had been elected to be the climate minister for her country in a very progressive government in South America, and had been really touched by this as an ecologist, and was really moved. And so for us, this was just to sense this rippling out when we can offer the work that reconnects in these spaces where people are coming together from around the world. And also to take this to the streets again. And we'd learned some stuff from the rebellions that we talked about earlier, and went out. You can see this middle image at the top. This is the fence that was around the blue zone, around the bit where the rabble on the streets were not allowed in. Yet the conversations that were happening there, this sort of edge between the delegates moving in and out and the protesters and others on the outside, and really trying to weave, just individually talking to people, bringing the spiral into our conversations. And also I remember a moment where there was quite a heated exchange going on. The police were stopping protesters getting to a certain place because the leaders of the world were having a posh dinner, and there was a microphone. And at some point I took the microphone and invited people to connect with the person next to them, and just to share something that they were really appreciating about being here together, something that was difficult for them, and a thing that had shifted while they were there, and how do they want to take the next step after this protest. And the mood shifted, and so there's this place for the work that reconnects as a de-escalation tool as well within action spaces, and a connection tool. And I was really touched because after that, and the conversation was bubbling, and some food arrived, and it was dark and wet. It was, November in Glasgow. A young tribal representative from I think from Canada, from the Indigenous peoples of Canada, took the mic and sang the most beautiful song about their connection to water. And so from this heated situation, offering a really light touch spiral, dropped into something very, very different and very connective. So yeah, again, just to share some little examples of where this work has been moving on the streets. And again, we'll share a little schedule of the things that happen. There's many other things that happened during this conference of the parties. And again, there'll be some resources available. So Kirsty, I don't know if there's anything you wish to close with, just aware of our time and to keep us moving.
I'm aware of our time, and it's just about time for a break. And yeah, I just noticed that there's so many stories, and I also know that many people here will have stories to share and curiosity, and we'll be moving into some shares in small groups after the break. So I think let's take a break and come back in 5 minutes. Yeah.
So just to be realistic, we'll call it a 3.5 minute break. So in 3.5 minutes, we'll be back at our screens. And then in 5, we'll be starting.
Perfect.
So welcome back, everybody. Hope you've had a good opportunity to stretch and take care of what you need. We're going to move into breakout rooms in a moment. It'll be an opportunity to reflect on what you've just heard, maybe share some of your experiences that you might have had, or is there something here that's piqued your curiosity you'd like to know more about? Is there something here that's really resonated with you? There's your opportunity to share. I think we have 10 minutes in breakout rooms, and you'll be in groups of 3. Okay, I'll put the prompt in the chat, and then so we'll open up the rooms. Okay, so reflecting on what's just been shared and how this resonates, inspires, or piques your curiosity. Are you ready for breakout rooms?
Just give me one more quick second. Is it 2 or 3?
I think 3s.
Either way, or we want 3s? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, just give me 1 second. I'm removing the people with the 1s.
Okay.
Maybe just, Joe, while you're getting that ready, I'll just answer one of the questions. Yeah, so thanks, Chris, for your question of how did Extinction Rebellion groups know about the Work That Reconnects? And it was something we missed actually in our sharing, that the Work That Reconnects is named as one of the core practices within regenerative cultures and Extinction Rebellion. And so we've been part of a working group that's been supporting that really come to life, because naming something is different from it actually happening and underpinning a movement. So many of us have been working to that. So thanks for that question. And so, yeah, it has become more and more aware of within these movements, whether it's called Active Hope or Work That Reconnects.
I mean, and Extinction Rebellion is such a large organisation compared to something like Just Stop Oil, where we're talking about, bringing that awareness of the work that reconnects to thousands of people. And part of that core of Extinction Rebellion is something called regenerative cultures, which is also very central to Extinction Rebellion. And Work That Reconnects sits within that. Okay.
How are you going, Joe? You're working hard on the tech. Thank you.
I think I got it.
Amazing.
Okay, so we're ready, and the prompt is just to reflect on what's been shared and how it resonates, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And how much per person? When do I send the?
So I think we'll leave it as an open discussion, Joe, rather than for people to decide how they wish to share. But again, that invitation to step in and back so that you'll get heard.
Perfect. Okay, here we go. And you're all going into breakout rooms. How long is this one, Tom, before you go? Oop.
So again, welcoming you back from your breakout spaces, and often in sessions that we do around building trust and courage in these movements, we do move in and out of breakouts a lot. And I always invite people, when you land back, to just check in on the screen with those people that you've just heard, and appreciating in this big group that might take a little bit of scrolling, but to acknowledge what you've just heard, what others have heard you say, what you've heard yourself say, and also acknowledge how that's feeling in your body just now, to connect with others around the world that are here for many different reasons, but brought together in this holding of the Work That Reconnects Network, and with some curiosity around how this work can support activism in these times of climate crisis. So yeah, just a moment to acknowledge each other, yourself, and to take a breath. And to see that there's already lots of things flowing in the chat. And we could probably spend the rest of the evening harvesting some of those conversations and acknowledging our ever time dilemma, that we have an end time and that we're going to continue moving. And I'm gonna invite us to move now into a little bit of time to hear other voices, maybe some questions. And Margot, I'm going to hand to you to just set that up.
Okay, thank you. Yes, this is an opportunity to have a little bit of open space. That could be either if you have any questions. Earlier there were questions in the chats, and if you have a question, please raise your hand. Then we can easily see at the bottom of your screen there is a way to raise your hand electronically. Or if you have a story to tell about your own link between climate activism and the work that reconnects, also we would love to hear that. So let's see, I believe. So if you have a question or a comment you wish to make, please raise your hand. Can I see that? Can I put the gallery view?
You should be able to see it in the participants window.
Okay, Janet. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. I live in Southern California. I forgot to put that on my screen. But one of the things that has hampered me in the last couple of years is COVID. And I discussed this in my small group. And hopefully that is tapering off. But that has really prevented me from many demonstrations and working more out in public. I've been very choosy on working at a certain native plant nursery, stuff like that. But I just wanted to bring that up as an issue that has held me back. So it's great to be in this group and hear, Tom, what you described, and Christy from the last COP and things that you're doing in London. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Joe, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm feeling inspired. My question is, I work with teachers and with young people, 5 years old to college. And sometimes I feel like I'm confused about how to convey information to them about the climate crisis, not to be false with them, but not to convey it in a way that frightens them or paralyzes them. So any resources that you can suggest to bring these conversations to young people in a way that allows them to engage.
Tom, would you like to respond to this?
Yeah, thanks, Joe, so much for bringing this question. I have a background as an environmental educator and still work with young people as well as activists and corporations around climate science. And for me, the work that Reconnects has offered such a valuable, what's the right word, framework to hold my education work within. And maybe just to give an example, at COP26, I came across a climate engagement tool called the Climate Fresk, which is essentially a set of cards that brings out the systemic nature of the climate crisis through the latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Science. And this is a 3-hour workshop. And what I've started to do is to weave the 3 stories of our time from the work that reconnects into this as a starting point to reframe how young people are able to see this time, you know, and that it's not just a time of unraveling, and that we don't just have this choice of business as usual, but that the great turning exists and that we can play our part in different ways. And I use active hope as a framework to say, you know, the first thing is we need to look at the truth of this time and to feel how that feels and to honor that. And I've done that in different ways, but often working outside with young people. And then to dream into what do we want the world to be? How do we want our future to be? And what steps can we take? So just using these tools that have been so beautifully articulated by Joanna Macy and Chris Johnston through Active Hope, and applying them in our educational settings, still using the science, still telling the truth, but framing it within this body of work.
Thank you. Thank you,
Just-
Tom.
You've just popped a resource in the chat that's a resource that's been developed by Friends of the Earth in the UK using Active Hope to support teachers in schools. So that's in the chat.
Mhm. And more resources are being put in the chat. So thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's great. Beautiful. So any other questions or comments? We still have a little bit something else we wanted to do, but we also want to create the space to hear from you. Tom, are you raising your finger?
Yeah, just while anyone else formulates something, Anne had a question in the chat while Kirsten and I were speaking earlier, and it was, I think, in relation to this mass spiral that happened in Hyde Park in London at the beginning of an Extinction Rebellion protest this September. How was that spiral done with the youth, and was it open sentences? Yes, Anne, so it was, somebody had the mic at the PA, and it was a beautiful sunny morning. There were lots of coloured flags, and people were just invited into triads, stood there in the park, and were guided through 4 simple open sentences that have been very carefully thought about to fit with the theme of the march, to fit with the moment, to help move people into that space. And the buzz was just beautiful. I love listening to that buzz of voices when meaningful conversation is invited through sentence starters. Yeah.
Mhm. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Great. So maybe this is the moment where we can actually shift from the talking and listening to actually do a little bit of inner work that comes from the Work That Reconnects and Active Hope. What I would love to do is to guide you in like a guided meditation. First of all, to do something with breathing, where we actually breathe in our pain, breathe in our concerns, breathe in our fear, our anxiety, anger, frustration, our numbness and not knowing what to do, to actually work with our breath with that. And then following on from that, I would like to do a short reading, a guided meditation in relation to the Shambhala warrior mind training, a very inspirational piece of work. So if you would like to join me, to actually bring your attention a little bit more inside, to notice how you sit here. You may want to close your eyes if you wish. Feel your sit bones on the seat. Feel your feet on the ground, probably wherever they are. And focus your attention on your breathing. No need to breathe in any special way. Simply watch the breath as it happens in and out. Feel the sensations of the rising and falling of your abdomen. And be relaxed and alert, letting go of all the words. So as you watch the breath, note that it happens by itself, without your will, without you deciding to breathe in and out. As though life is breathing through you. Just like everyone here in this Zoom call, everyone in your local area, everyone on this planet. Life is breathing through us, sustaining us in a vast, living, breathing web. Now, imagine your breath as a stream of air. See it flow through your nose, your windpipe, and into your lungs. Now imagine from your lungs, take it through your heart. Picture it following through your heart and out to reconnect with the larger web of life. Let this breath stream, as it passes through you and through your heart, appear as one loop in that vast web, connecting you with it. Now open your awareness to the suffering that is present in the world. Drop all the defenses and open to your knowledge of that suffering. We're in the middle of a climate crisis, a huge challenge. There are floods and fires, extinction of species, people in pain and isolation, in refugee camps, hospitals, people being picked up by the police because of their climate activism, people in times of loneliness and isolation. No need to strain for these images. They are present to you because of our interconnectedness. Just allow them to surface. The countless hardships of fellow humans and our animal brothers and sisters as well, as they swim the seas and fly the air of the planet. Now breathe in this pain on this stream of air through your nose, your lungs and heart, and out again into the world, into this web of life. You're asked to do nothing for now, but let it pass through your heart. Make sure it flows out again and don't hang on to this pain. Surrender it to the healing resources of life's vast web. A Buddhist saint, Shantideva, said, "Let all sorrows ripen in me." We help them ripen by passing them through our hearts, making good, rich compost out of all that grief and pain. So we can learn from it and enhance a larger and collective knowing. And if no feelings or images arise, only blankness or numbness, breathe that through as well. The numbness itself is a very real part of our world. If what comes is not pain of other beings, but our own personal suffering, then breathe that through as well. Your own anxiety or pain is an essential part of the grief of our world. If you feel a pain in your chest, as if your heart would break, that's right. That's all right. Your heart cannot break. But if it were, they say, the heart that breaks open can hold the whole universe. Your heart is that large, trust it. So now firmly establish your intention to live your life for the healing of our world. Be conscious of it, honor it, and nurture it every day. Be fully present in our current time. And find the courage to breathe the suffering of this world. Do not meet power on its own terms. See through it its real nature, mind and heart made. Lead your response from the heart. Simplify. Clear away the dead wood in your life. And look for the heart wood. And give it the first call on your time, the best of your energy. Put down the heavy burden of saving the world alone. Join with others of like mind and align yourself with the forces of resolution. Hold a single vision in the same thought, the transformation of yourself and the transformation of our world. Live your life around that edge, always keeping it in sight. As a bird flies on two wings, balance outer activity with inner sustenance. Follow your heart and realize your gifts. Cultivate them with diligence to offer knowledge and skill to the world. Train in non-violence of body, speech, and mind. And with great patience with yourself, learn to make beautiful each action, word, and thought. In the precious times of meditation, bring forth day by day into your own heart the treasury of compassion, wisdom, and courage for which the world longs. Sit with hatred and anger until you feel the fear beneath it. Sit with the fear until you feel the compassion beneath it. Do not set your heart on specific results. Enjoy positive action for its own sake and rest confident that it will bear fruit. When you see violence, greed, and narrow-mindedness in the fullness of its power, walk straight into the heart of it, remaining open to the sky and in touch with the earth. Staying open, grounded, remember that you are the inheritor of the strength of thousands of generations of life. Staying open and grounded, remember the thankful prayers of future generations are silently with you. Staying open and grounded, be confident in the magic and power that arise when people come together in a great cause. Staying open and grounded, know that the deep forces of nature will emerge to the aid of those who defend the earth. Staying open and grounded, have faith that higher forces of wisdom and compassion will manifest through your actions for the healing of the world. When you see weapons of hate, disarm them with love When you see armies of greed, meet them in the spirit of sharing. When you see fortresses of narrow-mindedness, breach them with truth. When you find yourself closed in with dark clouds of dread, dispel them with fearlessness. And forces of power seek to isolate us from one another. Reach out with joy. In it all and through it all, holding to your intention, let go into the music of life and dance. And then gently let's take this inner experience and how we resonate with it back as we return our attention to this moment and to our group. Open our eyes again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margot, for sharing these two practices running in together and bringing these practices as two of many that we use to hold spaces for honoring our pain with the breathing through, as also a tool to use in action spaces, and bringing lots of other body work practices that come through the Work That Reconnects to enable activists to de-escalate themselves in intense situations. And also the second part was the Shambhala Warrior Mind Training by Cooper, with gratitude to Joanna Macy. And this is a reading that we'll also share with you in the resources. And we wanted to bring this here because we've had such amazing feedback from activists, particularly those facing the potential of prison sentences. And one saying, if there's one thing I want to take into my cell, I want to take the Shambhala Warrior Mind Training with me, to resource us, to remind us, to encourage us in these struggles in non-violent direct action. So we hope for you this offered a little time of inner work and reflection as we move towards a close. And Kirsty, I'm going to pass to you.
There's lots of thanks in the chat already pouring in. But before we close, we wanted to ask you how you are. And again, just pop it into the chat. How are you now? And is there a next step wanting? I'm completely on mute. How are you now? And is there a next step wanting to emerge through you? Please do put your responses in the chat. Stirred and curious, heart is open. Be inspired to do more work, reconnect. We all need to decide. Inspired and grounded, and continue Shambhala Warrior Training and join the Extinction Rebellion group. And, heart bursting. I can't read all of them, but I'm going to just give a flavor. 2 thumbs and 8 fingers up. Calm and empowered to play my part and joining with others. And my heart is broken but open to the universe. That was one of the lines that was used in the breathing through, I think. Tingling and rejoicing in this work, and wanting to take more of these wonderful practices out to more people. Growing in the hope. Yes, let's grow our hope together. Prepared for this week on actions. Wonderful. Just calm, inspired, determined. Yeah, let's turn this grief and loss into action. Yeah. Thank you for that beautiful shower of where you're at right now. Thank you.
So I'm going to post a link in the chat. So maybe I'm just going to give you 5 seconds to put any last comments in, and then I'm going to post it, because otherwise it will get lost. And what I'm going to post is a link to a folder of resources, things that we've either referenced in this webinar, or other things that you may find useful. Maybe you're a facilitator wanting to support movements for climate justice. Maybe you're just curious, maybe this will inspire something for you. So 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to post it there now. This will also come out with an email that Joe will send after this webinar. But if you click on that and put it somewhere so that you won't lose it when the chat disappears at the end. And just to bring us to a close, and before Joe closes, I wanted to just invite 30 seconds together to bring our hands to our screen. So in inviting you, if your video is off and you're willing to show yourself, just to bring both your hands into view on the screen, and just to come into connection with your breathing. And just as you breathe in, to close your hands, and as you breathe out, to open your hands. So just tune into your breath for a moment. Don't try and force anything, just being breathed by the universe. And now look at somebody else on this screen. Maybe it's somebody you've already spoken to, connected with, or curious about. See what their hands are doing. And just moving our breath into tune with somebody else on this screen. And just open your peripheral vision to the movement of everyone that you can see. All of us around the world being breathed by life. And just use those hands to signal to one another something you wish to impart without words, before we hand to Joe to bring us to a close.
Beautiful. Thank you so much to Tom and Margot and Kirsty. It has been quite a beautiful journey that you've brought us on. And I just want to highlight that Margot shared some upcoming events that she'll be facilitating in the chat. I also want to share in the chat some upcoming events in the webinar and conversation cafe of the Work That Reconnects Network. And I just want to really thank you all for being here today in this sponsored event from the Work That Reconnects Network. And if you're not already, we would encourage you to look into becoming a community member of the Work That Reconnects Network to support the organization, and also to stay connected and in touch and benefit from our increasing services. We are working on improving services all the time to support the Work That Reconnects community around the world. Also, Kirsty put her contact in the chat, so if you want to be able to reach out to her, you can do that. Also, and Tom did too. Lovely. I also want to invite you to fill out the feedback survey that I just popped in the chat. This gives us an opportunity to know how this was for you, how we can improve on an organizational level, and we'll also share that feedback with the facilitators so that they can understand how this was for you from their point of view. That'll also be in the follow-up email. And just a reminder, if you want to save all these resources, you can click the little 3 dots in the corner of the chat and choose to save chat. So then you can have them saved in your computer for later. So thank you all so much for being here. It's been such a pleasure. And I think Tom has one last thing for us before we completely close.
Yeah, so as we step off into our places, whatever happens next for us, just an invitation to open your mics to whoop each other on to say your goodbyes in whatever language, whether that's human or other, just to hear each other before we leave this screen.
Thank you, everyone. Hug, hug.
And Ubuntu to everyone.
Yes.
Well,
Thank you.
Work and
Beautiful.
Ubuntu
Oh,
and
the
the
great
Gaia.
telling.
Thank you so
What a
much for all
Thank
this
you.
beauty and brilliance.
Yes, gracias.
Yes,
Welcome, Valerie
beautiful.
Yankee.
So glad you're all here.
Onward.
Yes. I'm sending a hug, a Zoom hug to everyone. Oh, I hope you feel it. I hope you feel it. I feel it.
Lovely.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Beautiful.
Well.